Hello and welcome to Transplants Take on Sport. My name's Lewis Daniels and my guest today is Jo Windridge. Jo does a fantastic job managing the England and Wales transplant cricket team and has supported her partner Robin through kidney failure and living with a transplant. She gives an insight into the transplant process and life afterwards from the point of view of a partner, including the emotional effect of watching a loved one suddenly take ill, managing worry, and the importance of talking to others who have been through similar experiences. She also describes how they taught their daughter about transplants, so please stick around if you've got young children. If you're enjoying the podcast, please make sure you subscribe or follow wherever you normally get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. As always, if you'd like to follow the podcast on social media, all the links will be in the show notes. Jo Windridge, welcome to Transplants Take on Sport.
Thank you, Lewis. It's a pleasure to be here.
For listeners, this is going to be a bit of a different one. You're actually the first non-transplanted guest, but still an important one nonetheless. Jo is the manager of the England and Wales Transplant Cricket Club, and your partner Robin had a kidney transplant.
Yes, he did indeed. Yeah, thank you for having me, for not being a transplant recipient, but hopefully my kind of story will resonate with others and help other family and friends that have been through transplants with their kind of partners and better halves and friends as well. So yeah, I just thought it would be nice to come on and talk about my experience and talk about the cricket club, obviously.
I think people will find it very useful. People might have read my story online. I remember when we first met at the Nets,
Yeah.
you said Robin's story and my story are pretty much the same.
Yeah, they're
In
very
terms of the
similar.
progress through. So we'll go right back to the start.
Yep.
When did yourself and Robin find out that he had kidney problems?
Well, we were actually just on holiday in Devon. He'd been having migraines for about 5 or 6 months before, been to the GP, quite severe migraines, but we had no experience of migraines, so we just accepted what the GP said. They were just migraines. We actually went to Devon on a family holiday. He had had a migraine the day before, but we thought nothing of it. Got there and he was feeling a bit funny. My mum took him on a very long walk on the beach to get some fresh air because that always helps headaches. And then we went out for dinner afterwards. When we were out having dinner, he actually managed to knock a drink all over the table because he couldn't see properly. Then when we were driving back, he said all the lights were jumping around, and I thought, oh, this is getting a bit dramatic now. What's he talking about? You know, it's just a headache. So he said, oh, I'm going to go straight to bed. So we went straight to bed, and then we were all still kind of socialising in the lounge area, and he came down and said, I can't breathe. I said, oh, I think we better call 111. Called 111. GP rang us back. He said, oh, probably best to go to hospital, but I think you've probably got asthma, which I thought was a bit odd at the time. So off we go, 2 o'clock in the morning to A&E in Devon, just a tiny little hospital. So there's no one else in A&E. So we're seen straight away by this lovely nurse who I'll never forget because we go into the triage bit and just do the normal checks, gets put on the blood pressure machine and all alarms start going off. And the nurse says, oh, don't worry, that's been playing up all day. Just come straight in here. So we go straight through and we just think, oh, this is, no, we don't think anything of it. Next minute, there's a lot of people around. And I'm like, that's a lot of people for one person that's got a headache. And yeah, from there, it just kind of all snowballed really quickly. I don't really remember a lot of it. It's all a bit of a blur. Next thing, there's a man in normal clothes there. It must have been like an hour or so later. And I find out he's the head of intensive care and he's come to see if Robin needs to be put in an induced coma because his organs are shutting down, which was quite a big step from a migraine. But yeah, it turns out he had heart failure. He had fluid on the lungs and his blood pressure was, I can't remember what it was now, 210 over 144 or something. Yeah, and he was basically, they said he was at risk of having a stroke any second. And he needed to be obviously kept in and they needed to work out what was kind of going on. So luckily he didn't have to be put in an induced coma, but they took him straight up to like the critical care ward and put him on some medication to try and bring his blood pressure down quite dramatically. Then they obviously did more and more tests and they brought a specialist up from Exeter Hospital who came in and told us that he had end-stage kidney failure and it was causing his heart to fail and fluid had collected on his lungs because his left side of his heart wasn't working at all. So yeah, it was a bit scary and very sudden, especially when I always get this wrong, but I think he was 25 when he got taken poorly. So yeah, it was all very sudden.
It must have been a big shock, and the blood pressure. Most people have been on have mentioned the blood pressure. That might, if there was a blood pressure a bit like Top Gear, the power lap leaderboard,
Yeah.
that might be near the top. I keep thinking every time someone comes on, I should ask the blood pressure. That's got to be up there.
Yeah, it's that
Um,
was
so for you being on holiday together,
Mhm.
had you been together long at that point?
Yeah, we've been together since we were 17, so we'd been together a long time, and we were living together for a long time before that as well. So yeah, it was a big change to our life though, because you kind of got your life kind of planned out of what, and obviously 25 is not that old, but we're just starting to think about. Robin was actually trying to get in the police before that, but luckily it wasn't quite successful that time, because obviously that would have probably put a little bit of a stop to his plans. So yeah, it kind of changed everything at the age of 25. It was quite a shock. It's not what we'd planned.
So them going straight into organ failure pretty much from nowhere,
Hmm.
how did that feel from your point of view?
Well, it was very much. It's all a bit of a blur. Like I said, we were on a holiday with my mum and dad, so it was actually quite lucky because my mum and dad were there. But it was a bit surreal because I went from spending all my time sat at his bedside, um, to then my mum and dad would be like, "Come on, let's go walk on the beach." And next minute, I'm walking on the beach as if I'm on holiday again. And I was like, "This is it was a very surreal time." And his mum had come down at that point as well. But I was in shock, to be honest. I just didn't feel real, and I kind of was a bit naive, thinking that it would get better and he'd be fine. Like, I didn't realize the kind of the implications at the time, because it was such a kind of a shock. And yeah, we were in hospital for a week. He was in hospital for a week in Devon before they transferred him up to Coventry, which is our local kind of kidney specialist hospital. And then he spent another week in Coventry. I guess it only really felt real when we got to Coventry, because we were closer to home, and it kind of hit me. And then obviously I was going home, so then I was at home on my own, and I was like, okay, this is real now. Like, something's really happened. Something, it's kind of changed. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock, and I think it really only hit Robin when he got to Coventry too, because he probably was getting that bit better. He wasn't, but obviously from where he wasn't really with it for the time that he was in Devon Hospital. And then they started having the more kind of serious conversations when he was in Coventry, saying you'll need a kidney transplant. And I've always been on the organ donor register. I remember signing up for it when I was younger, but I don't really think I understood. I didn't ever think that it would be part of my life. I just thought it was really important to be on it. So yeah, it was, and so I started like doing obviously a bit of research about transplants and stuff, and it was all just a bit scary, if I'm honest, at that time.
I think with everyone going through it, or most people going through it, it was the same for me. You don't really quite know what's happening. I found out I had kidney disease a bit earlier than when they'd failed. I was about 38%, I think it was. But Robin sounds a lot quicker. And the chats about organ donation, you hear about it before, and you maybe sign up, but never think that you might need to donate. Someone you know might need to receive
Yeah.
one, and then it all becomes very real. So for the leading up to the transplant, were you in line to be tested? Was there a chat of who was going to do it?
It was at the time I wanted to, but I've had some kind of health issues in the past with like glandular fever and things, and they kind of said Epstein-Barr virus is not kind of. This was obviously a little while ago now, so things have obviously changed. But Robin's mum was keen right from the start, and she was like, "I want to be tested," and obviously she was always going to hopefully be a better match than I'd be anyway. So she went forward for the test, and we were really lucky because every test came back, positive. Obviously, it was still a long haul, and there's a lot of like uncertainty and worry during that time. And she lived in Dorset at the time, so she was having to come up quite often to have tests and things. And obviously, Robin's still quite unwell at the time. He managed to avoid dialysis, but in that time, we're still going to appointments to see about having a fistula fitted. We're still going to dialysis training to learn all about the different types of dialysis. Was still kind of doing all of that process at the time as well. And his heart, obviously, he had heart failure, so they're still watching his heart, because to be able to have the transplant, they needed the heart to kind of recover, which luckily it did. But there was a lot. It was a lot of appointments for all different things, but luckily everything kind of came in line, and we were really lucky because Robin's mum wanted to donate right from the start, so that all went to plan, luckily.
So you worked up to the transplant process, the donation. How long after the original diagnosis of kidney failure did the transplant actually go ahead?
He was the middle of February when we were on holiday, and he had his transplant kind of middle of September. So how many months is that? Not many. 7 months. 7 months. Yeah.
That's one of the quickest I've heard for live
Yeah.
donation anyway,
Yeah.
from failure to, or from even finding out you had a problem
Yeah.
to being transplanted.
It was very quick, and I think adrenaline got everybody through it because there was no, like I say, there was a lot of appointments like everybody has, but I think because it was in such a short time and we were doing all the dialysis training, dialysis talks, all of that kind of stuff at the same time, because they just didn't know. They wanted to avoid him being on dialysis, but it was very touch and go if that would happen, and they did in the end actually bring his transplant forward. So yeah, it was all very, very kind of squashed in time to try and get it done before, to avoid the dialysis really and get it done as soon as possible.
Do you think with Robin's mum donating and you being very much involved, do you think that brought you all closer together as a
Oh
family?
yeah, definitely at that time, like it was incredible because it was, yeah, we were going through a lot together and we were all kind of in it together, which really helped. Because we, like I say, I do feel like we were all kind of still on the adrenaline from the shock of the diagnosis. So, but yeah, we were really close that time. She would come up and stay with us while she was having the tests, and we'd have like nice weekends, and I'd make dinner and things, and that would be like our time together. And she spent a lot of time, the three of us, and then obviously afterwards I looked after both of them. So yeah, we were all really close during that time. And I just, at the time, I wasn't a mum, but I am now. But I couldn't, obviously I wanted Robin to be better, so I would have donated if I could. But the way that she was just like, I'm doing it, and she never questioned it at any point. And at the time I was thinking, why does it matter to her so much? Like obviously it matters because that's her child, but until I became a mum, I didn't really understand why she just never questioned it. She just said, yeah, I'm doing it, and that's it. She just wanted to do it right from the start. But now being a mum myself, I can completely understand why she just didn't even question it and she wanted to do it straight away. But I just can't believe, like, it's such a selfless act to do, to put, especially at the time when she was living far away. She kind of had her own job and obviously her own life, and then it's putting a lot to one side to come up for all these tests all the time, and then obviously have the time off after donating the kidney. So yeah, she's incredible.
So we'll come back. We'll come on to after the transplant,
Yeah.
and you said you were caring for
hmm
both of them and the time off work. So did Robin's mum come and stay with you afterwards?
Yes, so they both obviously, I had both of them in the house. It was just me and both of them. So obviously Robin went in a bit earlier because they didn't know if he was going to need dialysis before the transplant. So he went in a couple of days earlier. So then it was just me and Robin's mum for a little while, and then took her in. And then that was a really surreal feeling when I kind of left them both there. And so obviously they were both in together. But I think the weirdest part was afterwards, while they were having the transplant. I obviously got told to call at a certain time, so I called to check how they were. And Robin was actually really well. He following straight from the transplant operation, but Robin's mum was a little bit sick, and so but that really took me by surprise because I'd never really thought about the fact that now Robin's mum, she was fine. Before, obviously, she had no health issues, but now she was obviously having quite a big operation, and then I hadn't really considered that actually the impact on her. So she was a little bit sick afterwards. But luckily, when I got there, they were both much better. But it was such a surreal feeling to visit both at the same time. Like because obviously it's not a normal thing. If you're going to hospital because someone's poorly, you're normally going to visit one person. I'm sure there's not many circumstances when you go to visit two. So I took my mum with me. And they were in rooms that were 2 rooms apart, which they like to do so that you can kind of encourage them a few days later to get up and actually go and see each other. They've got to make a bit more effort than if they're just next door to each other, which I don't think they appreciated at the time. But but yeah, it was a bit surreal. My mum and I were kind of sharing out, and I was like, right, you go to Robin, I'll go to Robin's mum, and then we would swap over. But yeah, it was crazy. Obviously, Robin went from being very poorly to being on cloud nine because he'd had his transplant, and Robin's mum went from being perfectly fine to obviously being in pain. So it was a bit of a surreal experience for me to see the kind of opposites. But luckily, they were both fine. But obviously, it is a big operation, so there's going to be some recovery involved.
As you say, massive operation. When they were actually in theatre, what was going through your mind at that point? Because I know my dad was there with me. My mum donated, and he was in my side room, just fell asleep on a chair the whole time. What was it like from your point of view?
I wasn't even at the hospital. They told me not to go and see them the morning of the hospital because it would probably be too upsetting. I was probably a bit of an emotional wreck. That's why they wanted to get me out the way. So I was actually at my mum and dad's house, but they were both at work. And I remember just kind of sitting in the house being like, this is such a surreal feeling because I know that they're both in surgery or crossing over at least in surgery. And it was just, yeah, it was such a surreal experience. And we lived quite away from the hospital. So I remember my mum getting home from work and being like, right, we'll go now, we'll start making our way, and being in the car and just thinking, oh, please let them both be okay. It was just such a surreal experience. I don't think I'd really thought about that day very much until it happened. And then when it happened, I was like, oh, it's really happening. Like, this is it. And I think it had all been the build up because Robin had been so poorly so quickly, thinking, oh yeah, he's going to get better. I was just thinking about him being better, but I hadn't really thought about the whole process to get him better for both him and his mum. So yeah, that day was a strange day to say the least.
So then, when you got back home again, the three of you, and you said you were caring for them,
Yeah.
did you have to take time off work as well to do that?
Yeah, I did have quite a lot of time off work because it's obviously quite a lot of appointments afterwards as well, isn't there, when you come out
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, Robin's mum came home first, so I had her at home for a couple of days, and then Robin came home a couple of days later. So it was nice. I think it was better when they both had each other. I had about another week or so off work to look after them, and then I went back to work. And I remember when I'd come home from a day at work, they'd be like, oh, we walked to the end of the road today together. And they were like made up because they'd made it to the end of the road and back. But yeah, so I had both of them at home. It was a bit of a weird experience, but I think that it was really nice when the three of us were together, especially everything we'd kind of been through and how poorly Robin had been. It was a very positive time, even though they were probably in pain and like getting to the end of the road was a struggle. It was just a nice time to really appreciate what she'd done for Robin and for me as well, because obviously it gave us our life back together.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was incredible what she did, and I'll be forever grateful for everything she put herself through for Robin to have the life he has, and for us to now have our family.
I think it's difficult to put into words the gratitude towards it, and we were talking about it in the
Yeah.
first podcast we recorded with Stephen Harrison, and his was from someone who unfortunately died, but
Mm.
for myself and Robin, whose mother has
Yeah.
donated to them, it is strange to think of, and I sometimes think. I think I was initially very worried and very anxious after the transplant about things going wrong because I thought my mum's put herself through this. I've got to make this work.
Yeah,
She
definitely.
said, "No pressure. It's yours now. You do what you do with it." But from my point of view, it was sort of I want to make this successful, make the most of it, and I don't want to go back into that illness again
Oh yes, definitely.
and think, "I'll let my mum down,"
Oh yeah, no, there's
even though you're not.
no, you're not. It's not. It's completely out of your control if it kind of works or if it doesn't work and how long it will work for. But I definitely I struggle with that quite a lot afterwards. And obviously, it wasn't even me that had the transplant. But I think I would buy a lot of gifts. I would like thank you gifts. I would write thank you cards. I just didn't ever feel like anything I could ever do was ever going to be enough to say thank you. And I still struggle a bit with that now, if I'm honest. We kind of have a party every year. So Robin's had his kidney for 9 years now, and every year we would normally have like a cake. We'd make a cake. Since we've had Ava makes the cake because she likes to get involved, and we'll have like a balloon, like a number 9 balloon, and we have like a little party. And it's normally we take Robin's mum for like a day out, or we take her for dinner to say thank you and celebrate everything she did. But nothing we do will ever be enough to say thank you. And I do, to be honest, I do struggle with that, even from it being someone I know, and it from being a live donor, and it not even being me that had the transplant. But it is hard to just ever feel like you've been grateful enough. But I think over the time, I just learned that she's just happy to see Robin healthy and enjoying his life. It doesn't matter what you achieve or what you do, as long as you're happy and healthy and doing what you want to kind of do. That's all that she wants to see. She just wants to see him living his life. And but yeah, it's a struggle to feel like you've been grateful enough, because it is such an incredible selfless gift to give anybody.
with the gratitude, was there ever a sort of protective feel from you to Robin, like, especially in the early days when you're caring for him? For example, like when he eventually went back to work again, was there a bit of anxiety or worry from you for him?
Oh yeah, completely. I'm a worrier. Like I'm such a worrier. And I probably have always been a bit of a worrier anyway, but since this whole experience, like I'm like a real worrier, and I have like real anxiety around anything to do with Robin's health. If he says he's got a headache, instantly I'm right back at he's got heart failure, he's about to have a stroke. That's how my mind works now, because you've kind of been through that. So when he was kind of going back to work, I was like, sure, you ready? And him being him, he was like, I want to go back, I'm done, like I've had enough of just sitting around. He even worked from when he got diagnosed to his transplant. He was working, as much as he could. He would go in for 2 hours a day, even if he could physically do anything, he would do it. So he was always pushing himself to just get back to normal. Robbins wants to be normal. He doesn't tell, not that it's not normal to have a transplant, but he doesn't want to tell people. If he meets someone, he wouldn't tell them he'd had a transplant. It's not something that he likes to kind of publicize. He just wants to be himself and just live his life, which is completely understandable, and everybody's different. But I'm obviously a lot more vocal about talking about it, so he doesn't normally have to tell anyone, because I've normally already told them. But yeah, I was definitely protective when he went back to work. It was a big shock going from sort of normality, but obviously he was very ill at the time, we just didn't know it, to severe sudden illness, to then having a transplant. And I just felt like I needed to just wrap him up in bubble wrap and keep him at home.
From there, how did you manage to move on and sort of continue with the rest of your life?
So there was one big change, which will tie in very well to your podcast now, Lewis. And we went to a cricket net. So when it was Great Britain transplant cricket at the time. So when Robin was in Coventry, when he was first diagnosed being poorly, every time I would go to see him, he obviously wasn't in a great place at that time, because you're a 25-year-old man that's just been told that you've kind of, you need a transplant. It's quite a lot to get your head around. I went in one day and he was very upbeat, and I thought, well, this is strange but great, but what's changed? And he'd been on the internet, and he'd found an article on the Great Britain Transplant Cricket Club, and he was like, I can play cricket. And he was so made up that he'd be able to still play cricket, because obviously at that time we just didn't know what it meant to have a transplant, what you could do, what you couldn't do. Which turns out you can still do anything you want.
Yeah.
But he was just made up that he was going to be able to play cricket. So he had sent an email that day to the person that was running it at the time. So that was when he was diagnosed at the start. So after he had the transplant, he emailed again and was desperate to go. And they had a net session, which was about 5 months later at Edgbaston, which wasn't actually very far away from where we lived at the time. We went along to the net session. I was very apprehensive, because I was like, you've only just had a transplant. It's only 5 months ago. What are you doing playing cricket? So he's all happy, got his bat packed. He's ready to go. He wants to get on the in the nets and play cricket. And there's me walking up to watch him at the gallery area, thinking, what is he doing? Please, please be okay. And I walked up there. I was a bit broken, to be honest. Everything that we'd been through, I just was a nervous wreck. So I walked up there and I met people that are still friends to this day and will be friends forever, because I sat down and I talked to somebody, and she told me her story, and then she listened to mine, and I instantly felt like I was part of something. I instantly felt like suddenly somebody understood me, because obviously my mum, all my dad, my family, they were all great, and everybody listened, everyone was supportive, all my friends. But instantly someone knew about everything I was talking about. They understood it, they'd been through it. Even if elements of the story were slightly different, you could still identify with what they'd been through and what you'd been through. And it was a huge turning point for me, because I'll be honest, I had to go for counselling after Robin's transplant, because I think the adrenaline of it just got me through everything, because it was such a short time in those 7 months from being diagnosed to having a transplant. And I always feel a bit selfish for talking like this, because I obviously didn't have a transplant. I haven't had to have a major operation and face all of that kind of thing. But I think sometimes it's hard, because I've had to watch that happen to Robin. And obviously, as much as it happened to Robin, we're together and it's affected both of our whole lives. Like, it changed everything at that time, from what we thought our life would be to what it is. So I think I had to have some counselling, but if I'm honest, it didn't really help because again, I was just talking to somebody that didn't really understand. Like they would sit and listen, which was great, but they didn't really understand. So going to that cricket net changed everything because I met people that I could just say a simple thing to and they just got it straight away, and it just made me instantly feel better about everything, and it instantly made me realize that we would have a life and it would be fine, because I just don't really think you can go to all the appointments and you get all the information. It is scary, like it's really scary, um and I don't think I could only really focus on all the things that might happen rather than just enjoying each day and going, actually he's fine, because he was very lucky, he had the transplant, it worked straight away. Everybody has a few blips along the way, but there were no major issues. But all I could really focus on was what was happening next, what was going to happen next. Something's got to happen next because all of this has already gone wrong, so what's going to happen next? So I think it gave me real hope and real understanding of what it is like post transplant, and that there will be people there to listen to me and help and support me and Robin for all of the kind of blips along the way, because there will be blips, but we get through them. And I think that's what going to that net session literally changed everything for me and for Robin, because I think it's really hard when you're a man, especially, not to be sexist, but he doesn't talk about his feelings. Like I said before, he doesn't like to really, he's not open and honest and telling everyone he's had a transplant. And think he found it really hard to talk about what he'd been through. Obviously, we could talk to each other, but we'd obviously been through the same experience, but it's not kind of the same as having someone else to talk to. So he came off, well, away from those cricket nets a different person, because he'd spoken to young men that had been through similar things to him and completely got everything he had been through. And he could play cricket and talk about it without realizing he was even talking about it. It's not like you've got to sit down and say, oh, tell us your story. He's just playing cricket and they're just talking about their experience while they're doing it. So that changed everything for Robin and I.
I got the same feeling straight away. Obviously, you can talk to family, you can talk to friends. I saw before my transplant and after, I was seeing a renal psychologist for the similar to your thoughts of the counselling, and I think that helped because they haven't had the transplant themselves, but they had that renal background and the renal knowledge behind them. I don't know if yours was the same or not.
No, I just had just a counsellor.
But going to cricket, the first one I came to, I think I was only about 3 or 4 months post transplant and didn't take part. Just fed the bowling machine.
Yeah.
I'd done my coaching course earlier that year, and that was sort of, if I can't play cricket anymore, similar to Robin's thoughts, if I can't, maybe you can, or yours as well, maybe you can't do it again. So I did the coaching course to keep that going, and then obviously found out about the team through someone I play with at my club who played against the transplant cricket team. Then even the first session, feeding the bowling machine and being very aware, very cautious of my own transplant, I was putting the ball in thinking, right, don't do it short, don't hit anyone in the abdomen. But then you see, when I came to the second one in, I think it was February last year, and it was like, oh, I can just do this as normal.
Yeah.
I'd only done a couple of training sessions before that, but seeing everyone playing cricket and talking about experiences again. My mum said when we went for a meal afterwards, I don't think you were at the second one I went to,
No, I didn't go to that one. Ava was poorly, I think.
but my mum was saying how refreshing it was for her to see me talking to people around my age who've been through the same thing, into the same sport, and us all sharing experiences while we're eating.
It's so special. Hopefully one day I'll get to meet your mum. So because I'd love to chat to her too. But yeah, it's just an incredible feeling just to go to that net session, to a game, to a social meal afterwards. You just sit and chat, and it's just also natural. And every time someone new comes into the team, like I still remember meeting you for the first time, but it's just that instant connection, like you're just part of the family and you have someone to talk to. Obviously, given the situation we're currently in, it's very helpful to be able to have people that understand, and for any kind of things that happen along the way, you always have someone that's been through something that you're going through that will sit and listen and talk to you about their experience and what happened. But yeah, I just felt that from that very first session, I was instantly part of something, and I'm really not that into cricket. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say that. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say that. But I like sport, but I've got more into cricket because I've had to. But before Robin had his transplant, like he went to cricket, I would rarely go and watch him because it was a waste of a day for me, waste of a whole Saturday. But now every transplant net, every transplant game, like I'm there. I want to be there for the cricket and just for the whole kind of experience. But yeah, maybe not the biggest cricket fan.
I was going to ask, were you into cricket before meeting Robin and before getting involved with the
No.
transplant team?
I do like some sports. I'm really into like horse racing and horse riding and things. So I do enjoy sport myself, but not cricket. But now I do. Now I enjoy cricket, but mainly transplant cricket, if I'm honest.
With the length of games of cricket, and I've said this to other people who've been on the podcast, which going back to the talking, the podcast has helped me speaking to other people who have maybe a lot of them I have met before, some of them I haven't met before, and you can share that experience with the cricket games being quite long, and you're spending a lot of time with your team, a lot of time with families, friends, donors. Do you think the length of the games brings you together even more as a bigger
Oh yeah,
family unit? And
definitely.
again, cricketers, I would say by nature, from playing for years now, talk about anything and
Yeah.
just any random nonsense while you're watching the game.
I find that cricket games go so quickly these days because I'm having such a good time. Like I love going to a game of cricket now, transplant cricket that is, because it's just like going for a day out with my friends. Like obviously all of the guys and girls that play have a great time and they're kind of having their banter on and off the pitch. And it's nice because obviously when they are batting, you kind of get to speak to everybody when they're kind of going in and out. And then throughout the game, I've got all of kind of the wives, the girlfriends, the friends, the family, their children. That's made a big difference since we've had Ava because we've kind of got the family social element as well. But yeah, I'm just really going for a nice chat and a picnic.
So you spoke about instead of the other partners, wives, girlfriends. Have you finally been able to open up more since getting to know them a bit
Oh
better,
yeah,
speaking more?
definitely, definitely. So one of the girls that they're not actually part of the club at the moment, but one of the girls, the one I first met, like I still am friends with to this day, and that was like 9 years ago. But yeah, the all of us kind of partners, we're really quite close. It's a strange one because we don't really see each other that much, but if we see each other, it's like we saw each other yesterday. It's just that kind of friendship. It's like an instant friendship, and yeah, we're always, as the boys are always on their banter WhatsApp, all the girls are always chatting on there. We've got our own like WhatsApp group, and we talk about everything, not just transplant stuff, but if anybody's kind of partner is having a bit of a tough time, we're there to support the partners. And yeah, we're just instant friends, and it's lovely because I feel like they're just friends for life. We say this every time we meet someone new. It's strange because like some of the girls I've known for years and years, and some of them I've only known for like a year or so, but they're all like so close. We're all so close and we're all such good friends. It's just instant. I can meet someone once and they're already part of the family, like they're already part of the friendship group. So it's a huge support. I know how much it means to the guys that and that play cricket, the kind of the team camaraderie and the kind of support they have all year round as well from the group. But yeah, the girls is also a big support and we chat a lot.
So you said you got into cricket since being involved with the team. You got
Yeah,
into it so much
I
that
know.
you're now managing the team.
I
How
am.
did that
So
come about?
I shouldn't really say I don't really like cricket, should I? Because I'm a cricket team manager. But I do like cricket, transplant cricket. Yeah, so that came about because obviously, as I've said, the team became a huge part of our lives. The person that was running it when it was Great Britain Transplant Cricket Club had to step away for personal reasons. It does take a lot to run the club, and I don't think I really appreciated that before when he was doing it. And I was kind of helping towards the end. I would host games. We'd hosted a few games and things. So he kind of needed to step away, and I said, well, I'm not prepared to. I don't want this to not be around anymore. I want to make sure that it can still help other people and still be there for us to enjoy. So I said that I would take it on. So I took it on in the year that the Australian team were coming over. So it was all a bit last minute and kind of got a bit thrown in the deep end. But yeah, so I was kind of started being in charge from the Australian, I think it was 2018, 17, somewhere around there. So yeah, my first kind of game in charge, if you like, was the first game against the Australians, which was incredible because I didn't really have any. I'd been to obviously games with Robin in the past, but I didn't, and I'd heard about this kind of rivalry with the Australian team, but I'd had no experience with it. And then we're in a beautiful cricket club in London with the whole team from Australia, and that was incredible, like really incredible. We had a couple of new players. Scott and Lee joined kind of on that game, and yeah, it's just from there it kind of just became part. And I think I kind of self-appointed myself, but nobody's really challenged me, so I'm still in charge at the moment.
I think it's clear to see how much everyone appreciates what you do for the team. And I listened to the first podcast that I did with Steve earlier, and picked up a quote from him that sums it up well. He said, "If we didn't have Joe, we'd talk about having a game, but wouldn't actually organise it."
Yeah, yeah, that's what they always all say. I think I'm definitely, yeah, I'm good at the admin side. Everybody wants to play cricket, and I kind of just we all make it happen. But I am having a lot more support from the other kind of girls and partners. They've all been great, especially Ashley, and Ashley and Adam. Obviously, they organised we had a big social ball, which they organised, which was great. But yeah, I think it's probably the men just want to be told where to go and at what time, and then they just want to play cricket. So if I can kind of facilitate that, that's fine, because like I say, I need my picnic and my chat with my girls. So but no, it's very important for me to kind of promote. I obviously from the sidelines can promote to the other teams that we're playing. I can kind of promote why we're there and what we're doing. So obviously the aims of the club is to kind of promote the transformative effect of having a transplant, and obviously what you can achieve after a transplant. You can still be fit, healthy, active, playing sport. That's really important to all of our players. And it's really important for people to see, we can still play cricket to the level that we want to play cricket at. Seeing that we have obviously got all abilities in our team, but everybody just wants to play cricket to their best ability. They're there to play the sport. So I kind of facilitate from the sidelines, making sure that we're kind of promoting what the club's doing, because we play against our own sides, like the players' own teams, which is good because it helps. Obviously, it's nice when you play against your own team because you kind of get that banter, but then they also get to see the other side of you, because they obviously, most teams know that you play for the transplant as well, and they get to kind of see what it's all about. So that's great. And then we like to go and play games against clubs that don't know anything about transplant cricket, and it's great to be able to promote what we're about and how important organ, tissue, stem cell, bone marrow donation is, and what it does to all sorts of people, young, old. It can affect anybody. So it's important that we kind of promote that, and to just honour all of our donors, as we were talking about before. Obviously, it's so important for however, whatever way you've got your kidney, everybody has their own special kind of connection with their donor. And I think playing the sport of cricket kind of helps them to show the donor what they can achieve. And it's really important to me, being the team manager, to be able to be on the sidelines promoting that while they're kind of playing the cricket. So yeah, it means a lot to me.
I think rightly so. With you've seen everything Robin's been through, and then learnt what everyone else in the team's been through, similar processes. Would you say you've got a proudest moment with the team?
Oh yeah, I've got a few actually, but I think one of the best days that I can remember of the club was when we had Max join us, and we gave him an honorary cap. Max from Max and Kira's Law. He came along to one of our games that Steve hosted, and oh, that was such an amazing day, because we did a film on the day for organ donation. which was a huge part of our day. And it was so important to be able to show our kind of players playing cricket and what they've achieved from it. And everybody kind of did a little piece to camera. That was such a special day, and to have Max there after everything he achieved with the new law, it was just, that was an incredible day. I was proud of every single person on that pitch. It makes me emotional every time. It's a bit cringy probably, but I get emotional every time I see them all out there, because I know all of their stories and I know what everyone's had to go through at certain times to get to that point. So it does mean a lot to me. But that day, to have Max there as well with all of our players and see him bowl the first ball, that was an incredible day. And we did a lot of publicity on the day. We kind of made some a national newspaper as well. So that was an incredible day to see Max there. After he's been through so much and he's done such an amazing job, him and Kira, to kind of raise the profile and change the law. Like, that's such a huge achievement. So that, I was really touched that day. I felt really, to meet him and his family was just an incredible experience. And also some of Kira's family came along to the game as well, so that was incredible. That was definitely one of my proudest days of the club, I would say.
If any of the listeners do want to see the video that Jo was talking about, I think it is the pinned tweet on the Transplant Cricket Twitter page, which is at eTransplantC. Max is a little legend, isn't he?
Oh, he is incredible.
He's changed the future of organ donation, and I think everyone's grateful for, or Kira as well, and everyone's grateful for what them and their families have done to hopefully allow more people to have a second chance at life and live that to the fullest. Watching him bowl the first ball, I wasn't part of the team at the time, but I saw the video before my transplant and thought, that must have been a good day.
Yeah. Oh no, that day went so fast. I wish I could do it all over again, because that was definitely one of the best days that I've had with the team, and I know everybody took so much from that day. It was incredible. Yeah, that was definitely one of my highlights. And I think parading, we also got the opportunity as the team to parade at Edgbaston before the England-India game in 2018. It was actually the same year that the Transplant Games were in Birmingham, so it all fitted in quite nicely. So quite a lot of our players were already there to taking part in the games anyway, in the Transplant Games. So we were given the opportunity. They were promoting on the day organ donation. So they gave us the opportunity to parade pre-game, which was incredible. It wasn't that full, if I'm honest, because it was before the game, but it was such a moment to see everybody kind of walking around, and every single person that was in that stadium like cheered and clapped while they were walking around, and it was just an incredible moment. And then we were lucky enough to be invited to stay and watch the game. So I did see, that's another game of cricket I've been to. That was a long one.
It must have been a special day.
It was a special day because we also did a lot of press on that day, and in the kind of, I don't know the cricket terminology, in the breaks, what are they called? Are they intervals, breaks?
Was it a test match?
It was a test match, yeah.
Lunch, tea.
Yeah, in the lunch and tea, that's it. Lunch and tea, that's it. In the lunch and tea, they did quite a lot of organ donation promotion. So they actually had donor families there as well, talking about their stories in the lunch break. And then we actually were able to meet them as well. So that was my actual first experience of meeting donor families, and that was incredible. So we had that opportunity on that day too. We met NHS Organ Donation, had like a stand there, so we went and chatted to them, and they hadn't actually, it was a bit surreal for them. They were promoting organ donation, then suddenly a whole cricket team of organ transplant recipients rocked up, and we're like, oh, we've all had transplants. So that was, well, obviously I haven't. So that was nice. It was an incredible day. We did a lot of press, which some of that kind of came out afterwards too, which was fantastic. But that was a very surreal day, because that was organ donation and cricket really came together that day, which was an incredible day. That was another very special day.
If anyone wants to find out about the team, be more involved, where can they go and find them?
So the best thing to do is probably email me at englandtransplantcricket@outlook.com, and then I can send them some information through. We don't all go to Facebook. It's just England Transplant Cricket, I think, isn't it? Ooh, I should have probably checked that.
I think I tagged them last week. I think it's England and Wales Transplant Cricket.
Oh, England and Wales Transplant Cricket, you're correct. And yeah, we're on Twitter too. But yeah, the best way is probably to drop me an email And then hopefully, given the current situation, hopefully we'll be able to get back to actually all being together soon. And we'd love to have anybody. We welcome any form of transplant recipient. Anybody that's on dialysis or waiting for transplant, you don't have to have had your transplant yet. You know, if you need to come along and learn about what it's like to have a transplant, then that's fine too. And donor family as well. Anybody that's kind of involved in the whole kind of transplant process is more than welcome to come. And like we said before, friends, family are more than encouraged to come. The social element of cricket really helps because it really encourages everybody to come along, and hopefully it helps people like it helped me, as well as the players.
I really hope we can get some cricket in, hopefully this year, if not
I know.
next year, or at least some form of net going on. I know my family are all looking forward to coming and having a look, getting involved, watching the game, and meeting everyone else.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. Yeah, I missed the opportunity to meet your mum and family. So, we'd love anybody that wants to come is more than welcome to come along. It's all part of the team. It's really important to have players and all their family and friends. And I think sometimes a lot of the family, like I said before, I didn't really go to many of Robin's cricket games before. I might have popped down for 10 minutes to see him, but I wasn't really that interested before having his transplant. So it's really an opportunity for me to see him playing cricket, and especially see him healthy and playing cricket and see what he is able to do now. And he's just playing the sport he loves. He's cricket through and through. There's no other sport that's really of any interest to him. So it's all about the cricket. So it's just really special to be there and be able to see that, and then to see all my other friends, everybody, that, especially if anybody's kind of going through a bit of a hard time and then they have to take a little bit of a time away and then they're back playing cricket. It's just lovely to see how we can just involve everybody. And so, yeah, I would love to meet your family one day, Lewis.
Hopefully this year, but
Hopefully.
we'll
We
see.
are,
We'll see
yeah.
with the vaccine. And speaking of the vaccine, and this
Yes.
year, last year, which has been a bit of a nightmare, because of the transplant. You're a shielding household.
Oh,
I'm in a
yes.
shielding household. How have you been coping with the on and off lockdowns of 2020 and the start of 2021?
Shielding, yes. That is an interesting topic. I think for the first one wasn't too bad, because we kind of made the decision to shield before we got told to shield, because you look at the news and you kind of think it's getting a bit scary now. So that was fine. We kind of made our own decision, and we've got a 5-year-old little girl, Ava. So she at the time was only 4, so she was in reception, but we were thinking, oh, it's okay, we can homeschool a 4-year-old, that's fine, we'll be fine. Robin then got furloughed. I've worked the whole way through, but being able to work from home, because luckily mine's kind of office based kind of work, so it's fine. I've been able to work from home the whole time. So yeah, the first time, I mean, we didn't even go in our gardens for the first 8 weeks, because I think the really hard part of it is when you're getting, I think it was probably, it's harder for me because I've got really bad health anxiety and I really want to just protect Robin at all times. So when you're getting letters saying if you need fresh air, go to an open window, like you do kind of, we took it very much to heart. Like I was very scared to even go outside in our garden.
We were the
So
same.
for 8 weeks we just stayed in, and I think when the first letters came out it was like, don't even go, well, I think they still say it now, don't go within 2 meters of anyone in your household, which you think, we've got a 4-year-old, like how is this even possible? We can't do that. So I think we made the decision quite quickly, if we all shielded together then we'd be the safest we possibly could be. We didn't go outside for about the first 8 weeks. We then ventured into the garden and slowly ventured out. My dad's a farmer and luckily has a field nearby, so we ventured out to walk in his field alone without worry of kind of coming into contact with anybody. So that was about as exciting as it got. And then Robin went back to work in August when shielding kind of paused. So he was much happier when he was back at work. Ava went back to school in September and everything kind of felt a bit more normal. I was still working from home. But then, now this one is tough. This is definitely tough. I think
Very.
because we know how long it goes on for, because it's constantly on the news, the worry is very real. And I think, homeschooling, both working from home, is tough. But the main thing is we're safe, and that's what we kind of remind ourselves every day. As long as we're all safe and healthy, then we'll get through it. I think having gone through what we've all been through helps, because you know that you've been through tough times. Ava's a superstar, because I do think it's obviously hard on children, especially she's an only child, so she has no one to play with apart from Robin and I. So yeah, it's tough, but Robin, luckily, it's good timing. Robin got his vaccine appointment yesterday, so he is going for a vaccine tomorrow morning as we
Hopefully that
record
goes
this.
well.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So that's given us some hope. I know, obviously, we're still going to have to be extremely cautious throughout, but I think it really has helped ease the kind of worry a little bit. That hopefully that will give us some hope and some protection.
I hope so. How aware is Ava of what's going on and understanding what's going on at
Um,
5?
Well, she is actually a little superstar, and I actually wanted to mention, obviously, about the how we explained to her about Robin having a kidney transplant. So,
That was one of my questions.
from when she was quite little, we've never hidden it. Obviously, he takes, I can't even remember how many tablets, a lot of tablets. She sees him taking a lot of tablets, so she's always known Daddy takes tablets. And then we've always just said Daddy's got a special kidney. Obviously, now she's getting that bit older, we can explain it a little bit more. But Robin's mum got an amazing toy from, I've forgotten the name of the lady, but she's called Transplant Toys, and she makes toys and that have had transplants. So Ava's actually got a crocodile that's got a rabbit arm and a rabbit leg. So she knows it's called Marcus, and she knows that Marcus has had a transplant like Daddy. She had that toy from when she was about 2 years old. So he's always been on her bed, and we've always talked about the fact that the Teddy has a transplant like Daddy. So it became a normal part of conversation. So now she knows that Daddy has a special kidney. She's seen him be poorly in the past, from like sick bugs or colds that turn into viruses, etc., CMV, etc. So she's aware that sometimes Daddy has to go to hospital. She knows Daddy has to have blood tests. She knows that sometimes we have to be careful with things like sick bugs. She was already kind of used to, from being at school, Robin's quite susceptible to sick bugs. They make him quite poorly since his transplant. So she's always been used to, if there's a sick bug going around at school, we get home and we wash all the clothes and we make sure we have a shower before we go anywhere near Daddy. So to be honest, this led into it. So the current situation of making sure that Daddy's okay and being careful, even when she was back at school, obviously take all the uniform off, wash the uniform, make sure you've had a shower, don't go near Daddy till you've washed your hands. She's really good at understanding how to keep Daddy safe, which is quite a lot for a 5-year-old. But she is amazing. She just says, "Oh, we've got to do it to protect Daddy's special kidney." So her understanding is really good, actually, and she hasn't ever questioned it, and she's never said I don't want to do this, but she's not said I want to be like go and do the things, because even in the summer when her friends were kind of maybe going on play dates and going places to visit, she's not been anywhere for nearly a year now, other than kind of school and home and walks. So but yeah, she's very resilient, surprisingly so. But yeah, the transplant toys really helped early on, from because when she was about 2 she had that, and she just understands transplants. But I think as she gets older now, probably can teach her a little bit more about what that really means. And obviously she knows that it's from um, what she calls Grandma Menny, which is Robin's mum, Penny. So yeah, she'll say, you've got Grandma Menny's kidney, and so she understands to that kind of level. So yeah, it's quite good understanding, I guess, for a 5-year-old.
So it's the transplant toys, for anyone who might want one of those for their
Yeah.
child. Are they available to buy anywhere?
Yes, the lady's on Facebook and Instagram. I'll have to send you the details, and maybe you can link it in the kind of
I'll
description.
do that. It'll be on
Because
I'll put it in the description. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter,
yeah,
put it everywhere.
I'll message her and get some details. But no, they're amazing, because I think it obviously is a scary subject. And we obviously had Ava after Robin had his transplant. And it was a little worry in my mind at the time, when you're kind of having a family, like how will we explain? Because as much as we have like a normal life, there are bumps along the way that kind of, Robin has been in hospital for little bits and pieces of her life. But I think that really did help make it more understandable. And we've also taken her, when the games was at Birmingham, we took her to the transplant games. And I think that was really important, and we will definitely do that again and again. We take her to the cricket. So coming to the cricket, a lot of the players also have children of similar age, so that's really important to me, because I think growing up she'll then have the friendships like I have. Then she'll have people that she, we can say so and so's daddy's also got a special kidney, so it's not like she feels like completely different. Her daddy's not really different, because we know other people that also have the same thing. So I think that's really, really important, to bring her, and it's another big part of the reason that I'm kind of involved in the club, to kind of give that to families and to their younger children.
Yeah, I think certainly in this current situation, it's useful for you and one less worry to have the fact that she understands
Yeah.
the transplant process to a certain extent, and also why she needs to be careful,
Yeah.
why she has to stay in.
Yeah, I think she's just kind of got used to it, which is a bit sad to me, really, because like obviously it's been a long time now. But yeah, she luckily no ill effects. She's quite happy playing at home. I think she obviously missed family like we all do, really, but hopefully we'll get back to normal soon. But for now she's happy. We're all okay in our little house of three. We'll just keep saying, oh, it's just the three of us, keeping nice and safe and healthy for daddy. So yeah, it's she's fine for now. But yeah, homeschool. I'm counting down the days till half term.
The homeschooling going well.
No, look, she is so good. I think it's just trying to balance everything when you're both trying to work from home and homeschool, and you're in the same walls all day. Obviously, you go a little walk if you need to, but it's not really. You're in the house all day, aren't you? So yeah, there's only so many phonics and math sheets you want to do.
If she wants any maths, there's a video on my Twitter which I did in the first lockdown of homeschooling.
Oh yes, I must show her that. Yes, definitely, I will show her that.
Bit bit of magic, bit of maths.
She will love that. Yeah. Wow. I hadn't thought of that. Right. That's Monday's maths sorted then. Thanks, Lois.
Have there been any positives to come out of lockdown for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like spending the time all together, because life's just so busy, isn't it? Normally, I work full time. Robin works full time. Ava's at school. She went to school when she was just 4, so I felt like she went to school quite young, and actually kind of appreciated having her back, like having some time back with her while she was still little. And I've not spent this much time. Well, we would never get this opportunity to spend this much time together. I've never even spent this much time with Robin, even through the transplant process. So yeah, I think the big positive is the amount of time we've had as a family. Like that's really special. And as sad as it was at Christmas to not be able to see any of our families and things, it was really special that we had a Christmas just the three of us. So I think definitely really appreciate the time that we've had together, and we've been able to kind of make much stronger like bonds between us all, really, and just yeah had the time to just be a family. So that has been really special.
I think it's a time that we're definitely going to all remember for for good and bad.
Yeah.
I think definitely, certainly from my point of view, I appreciate life more,
Oh yeah,
more grateful for the second chance I've been given. And now, once this does end, hopefully it will end, um, just to go for it and do
definitely.
everything that I want to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, as like I've obviously said before, I'm a little bit of a worrier, but I think this situation in a weird way is going to make me kind of worry less about things. So I worry about health. It probably won't stop me worrying about that. Probably a bit more worried about that. But I think worrying about doing things, I'm quite, yeah, I would be a bit more kind of hold myself back. But now I'm just thinking, no, we just need to get on with life now, and just be outside. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Just be outside and with family and friends, and yeah, yeah, can't wait. On a cricket pitch, obviously. On a
That's the
cricket
ideal.
pitch.
Joe, it's been a pleasure to chat to you today, and I think people listening will find this really useful, especially people in your position, partners, family of transplant recipients. I'll be able to take something from you and relate to what you've said as well, all the way through. Because I think it is difficult for family of transplant recipients, and you go through the process indirectly.
Mm,
It still has an effect
yeah, definitely.
watching somebody else go through that.
I hope it doesn't come off that I having a transplant is a huge huge thing to go through. And I hope it doesn't come off selfishly that I'm thinking,
Oh
trying
no.
to explain all the things that I've also been through, but I just really hope that it helps people. It doesn't even have to be, obviously Robin is my partner, but it doesn't even have to be partners. It can be mums or dads that have watched their children go through it. It can be like, best friends. Like, you do see, it's a big change, and it doesn't mean that your life has changed forever and that you won't, get some of that normality back. But during the process, and there are elements of your day-to-day life ongoing that, that will be a little bit different, and there will be times that you kind of have to kind of go through things that you wouldn't wish to go through. But I just hope that it just shows people that there is a community of people out there that have all been through the same thing. I think when I was going to hospital with Robin, we were sitting in waiting rooms full of older people, and I don't think we ever met anybody our age the whole time we were in there. And I just would really like people to understand that there are other people out there that are going through the same, people, young people, people with young families, and just kind of appreciate that support. You really need to reach out, because it really did save me and Robin.
One last question before we go. You've listened to, I think, the majority of these so far, if not
Yep,
all of
all
them.
of them. They're fantastic.
You might know there's a final question coming.
Yeah.
I've adapted it a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So, what is one piece of advice you'd give to a partner, family member, friend, relative in any way of somebody facing a transplant?
I would say that you definitely need to talk to somebody that's been through a similar thing. You need to reach out and be part of that community. I was a bit scared to start with, to kind of speak to anyone. And like I say, I did try speaking to people that hadn't been through the process. It definitely did help a little bit. But I think if you can get that kind of support from somebody that's been through a similar thing, it will really, really help. It's hard sometimes to speak to the person is going through the transplant without feeling selfish, or without wanting to burden them with your kind of worries or your kind of issues. So I think it's really important to kind of seek that support and be part of that kind of community. And I would also say, try not to worry. I'm a worrier. I literally worried about everything that could possibly happen after a transplant, rather than focusing on the fact that actually normal life would be possible. Now we have a family, like I say, we have a pretty normal life, and we can do anything we kind of want to do. So I would say, try not to worry. It will be okay.
I think that'll resonate with a lot of people. I know I was a big worrier, still am really.
Yeah, me too. That's
Um,
okay. I can say the advice. I don't always take it.
but yeah, people will agree with you. People, that'll resonate with a lot of people. And very importantly, as you've alluded to, talk to people,
Yeah.
speak up. It's not weak to speak.
No, definitely not.
And cricket specific, opening up cricket do a lot of work for cricket and mental health. So if you haven't checked them out, go and have a look. And there we go.
Yeah, perfect.
Jo, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Before we go, if anyone would like some new cricket gear, Neon Cricket have kindly agreed to sponsor me for the 2021 season as a coach and ambassador. So if you are looking for any gear, you can go to www.neoncricket.co.uk, and at the checkout use the code LewisD25 for 25% off everything on the website. Hopefully this helps. I've been Lewis Daniels, and you've been listening to Transplants Take on Sport.